Good.
Did we mention that it was recording to people?
I think that's implied there, friend.
Okay.
It should indicate when they enter the space that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it will tell them.
Don't worry, Nathan. We'll edit it in post.
As you have 11 participants logged in right now, there, Matt, and we're just waiting for those participants to keep trickling in. So give us a few minutes here, folks.
Hello, Aaron.
It's funny. Everyone is so awkwardly quiet. We're not having any, friendly banter.
It's the professional face.
I have people on here who know that I'm much more friendly than I am professional.
Same.
Yeah. Well, while everyone's trickling in, welcome everyone. I am really glad you're able to come. I think this should be a lot of fun tonight. Everyone else wants to have a serious conversation, but
Matt, as people are trickling in, the floor is yours, my friend.
All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our Progressive Coalition event with our 3 elected officials here. We have
three candidates.
Candidates. Yes, I'm sorry. Candidates. We have here 2 candidates for both districts of, or both commissioners for both, or candidates for commissioners for both districts, 1 and 2 that are open, and then our state 10th legislative district state representative position. We have Fe Mischo, Nathan Howard, and then Ivan Lewis. I see hellos in the chat. Hi, everybody. There we go. Just gonna go through it, and as everyone's rolling in, we're just seeing how many people we get in first before we really kick it off. Hi, Allison. Hi, Albert. Hi, Mary.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Miss Howard. Hi, Art.
Hi.
Is Miss Howard my wife or Miss Howard my mom?
Your mom. Well, both of them said hello, so hello. Hi, everyone. So we're, I'm just gonna go in just a little brief introduction here. My name's Matt Colston. I am Nathan's campaign manager for his campaign. I am also the president of Local 1845, which is the employees union for county employees, technical, clerical, everyone except public works, sheriffs, and prosecuting attorneys. That's essentially who I represent. I first also have to say, because I'm a county employee, that my opinions here are my own. They are not those that reflect Island County or any offices above me. It's just my own. So I just wanted to say that before we get off here and start talking real politics. And I'm joined here with Jessica Oss.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am currently serving on the Oak Harbor School Board, and I also am the coordinator for the Oak Harbor Youth Coalition. So happy to be joining you all tonight and co-hosting with Matt.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Matt and Jessica are co-hosting for us, and Joseph, even though he's listed as one of the panelists, is here helping with technical support. Joseph, do you want to say who you are?
Do I want to say who I am? Maybe I do. Maybe. No, my name is Joseph Busig. I've lived here in Oak Harbor all my life. I am involved with various organizations like CADA, the Youth Coalition for a bit, and I'm getting back on that with Jessica. and just a volunteer in our community. So, and I'm also chair of the Island County Democrats. So, just kind of around Oak Harbor and Whidbey Island. So that's who I am, and I'm glad to be here with such great candidates and such great panelists. So, and I'm great to offer some tech support too. So that'll be fun. But yeah, let's get this started.
Oh, great. Thanks, Joseph. Just some order, just to kind of describe what the program's going to look like. The first 2/3 of this will be mostly just a roundtable between the candidates, just talking about sorted issues and topics of the day. And then the last third will be questions that were pre-submitted from you all, and we're just going to present them to the candidates, and we're just going to try to get through those and really have a substantive conversation about where each of these candidates stands. So
I will jump in, Matt. If anyone in attendance is interested as things develop and you have a specific question that you'd like to pose, you can direct message either Jessica or Matt in the messenger feature there, and feel free to pop it their direction, and they'll do their best to appropriately categorize it and get it in the right section if we have time.
And also, please remember to put where you're from when you submit your questions, so we know what area of the island we're coming from.
Yeah, because to clarify, obviously, Fee and I are running for Island County Commissioner, so that's Island County, but obviously the 10th LD, for those that don't know, so maybe not obviously, the 10th LD is, I think, 60% Island County, so all of Island County is in the 10th LD, and then there's, I'm assuming, 20% in Skagit and 20% in...
It's a little bit more, but it's Skagit, Mount Vernon, LaConner, and Peace of Mount Vernon, and then the Stanwood and surrounding Stanwood, Camano communities.
Yep.
Great.
So we have a good mixture of questions and content that's going to be addressed, because there's a lot of overlap here. Fee in Oak Harbor, Nathan for South Whidbey, and then Ivan for all over. So
Central and South Whidbey.
Central and South Whidbey. Sorry, the Oak Harbor mindset came out there a little bit.
Yes.
But
I live in Central, and I have a strong affection for Central. So.
We're gonna just dive in to question to all three, and just kind of just go with it, and we can get to some of these questions. First question, why do you guys want to work together? What made you guys want to work together?
Well, let's each start off with a few moments while we're answering this question to introduce ourselves. So I am Ivan Lewis. I am running for state representative in the 10th legislative district for position 1. I have a history as a former volunteer firefighter, EMT, Eagle Scout, farmer, contractor, roofer. I've done a little of this, a little of that, and now I find myself as a small business owner in the middle of an incredible crisis, a crisis that has really emphasized the need for us to reform a lot of the systems that are just not working. We have an incredible fear for both our lives and our livelihoods, and it really exacerbates the issues of childcare and the issues of education and the issues of healthcare. And what I am seeing right now is, if we don't take action today, my children's generation will be far, far worse off than my generation, my parents' generation.
I'm going to go and pitch it to Fee for a little introduction for yourself.
I'm a mom and military spouse, as well as a decade-long resident here in Oak Harbor. We were stationed here, a decade ago. And a lot of my background is advocacy work. I've done a lot at the state and national level for early childhood education, working families, domestic workers, and so on. So I have done a lot of work in Olympia all the way to DC to fight for my causes. And I also am very involved in our community here. I am a member of many boards, and I just got word that I am a new member of the board for CADA. So that was great. Yay. And the library board, as well as community health advisory board. And I'm a communications lead for Save the Children Action Network. And so I am a voice for those most underrepresented. And so I hope to bring that to our county.
Great. All right. How about from you, Nathan?
Yeah, so hello, I'm Nathan Howard, obviously. I live just outside of Coopville with my wife and my 4 young children. And I'm running to be the next Island County Commissioner because I'm passionate about making our local government more effective so that we can better tackle the issues. One of the main reasons I'm running is that I believe that the present challenges that face our community require our leaders to act proactively, something that I have worked tirelessly on. In tackling the big issues that are facing our community, like climate change, affordable housing, economic recovery, and all of these things, we don't really have time to stay in the status quo long before we see consequences of too little, too late. And I've built up trust amongst staff and elected officials, and they know me as someone that's honest and enjoy working with me. I worked at Island County for years, and I served as a staff representative on multiple boards, including salmon recovery, transportation advisory, and water resources. And I have extensive knowledge and experience with the Growth Management Act, land use planning, zoning, shoreline regulations, the State Environmental Protection Act, housing, and public utilities, especially around water systems. It's not many elected officials who come into the job really have that kind of experience, that real technical experience with the job. And so I feel like that's something that I bring to it.
Okay. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, all of you. And just to kind of circle back to the original part of the question, why do you guys want to work together? What was it that made you go, I want to work with Fe, or I want to work with Nathan, or I want to work with Ivan?
Do you mind if I kick this one off?
Get into it.
Sure.
So one of the big things that I care a lot about is collaboration. I feel like that's crucial to how I operate and how I like to work. So I like building up partnerships, and so that we can support the changes that we want to see. I was actually recently talking with one of the elected officials, not one of the commissioners, but one of the other elected officials, about working with the other elected officials and how important it is to build up that rapport. And so to me, that's a big part of it. But why I specifically want to work with these two is multiple reasons. First off, we agree on many ideas. I think you'll see that tonight when you hear us talk, that we agree on a lot of ideas. So that's very important. It's not to say that I don't agree with the ideas of other people that are running for office. It's just that I would align most closely with the ideas from these two candidates. But the second thing I really want to touch on is most of our elected officials and our candidates that are running right now are of retirement age, and there's absolutely nothing inherently wrong with that. I want to make that clear. But I do think that, so that experience is great, and having that life experience is great, and that can make great leadership. But I also think it's important to bring in different perspective, especially from younger and working age people with kids. All 3 of us have young kids. We're all working age. We all are working. And our generations and our kids' generations are the ones that are really going to be impacted by a lot of the big decisions that we're making today, like climate change. And so for me, it's about this, bringing this new youthful perspective. And I do find that youth and people, they bring in a fresh perspective that others might not have. And to me, that's a real important difference. There's a lot of systems in our society that aren't functioning, and we've got problems like climate change and systemic racism, and we haven't been able to deal with them under the current system. So we need some fresh perspective in here to change things up. And I know I talked a lot, but to me, this is one of the fundamental things about this working together, is we need to change our system, and it needs to bring in some youth perspective to rethink how we do a lot of these things.
I think that really one of the things about this this collaboration being built on the fact that a lot of our decisions are made through the lens of our kids. I mean, I think that I speak for all of us in the area where we all look at what the future of our children's generation is going to be through the lens of this current crisis, and years of inequality being built on top of each other, and we go, well, gosh, our kids will view this through the same lens. I know that I want to be able to have that conversation with my children and say I did everything I could, and we're in that same boat.
And with Fe, especially with you doing your work with protecting, kids, people who are disadvantaged, what that sounds like something that's definitely in your wheelhouse that clicks.
It is. I've done a lot of advocacy, and mainly, a big one is around children, and also focusing on more than just education, but also child brides, and also children that are affected at the border, and also children that are affected by war, as in, in Syria. So we are seeing this as a huge issue in our world today, and really listening to children and hearing from them. They are terrified of climate change. Sunrise Movement is a huge group of young activists, because what previous generations have done to our environment is affecting them, and it will keep affecting them unless we step up and do something. So really listening to those that are even behind us and younger than us, it's also bringing their voice and saying, we need to hear what they have to say, because this is their world. They will be their generation, coming after them. It will be their world. And so we have to keep this momentum going, and these thoughts and this policy moving forward to benefit generations, because we may not see things in our time, but we'll know that we are doing this to the best of our ability for generations, for my children and their children, and so on.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I've talked to a fair amount of our generations even younger than us, and I actually feel their perspectives on these issues, even these tough issues like climate change or systemic racism, they have a stronger grasp on these issues than I felt I ever did at their age, and to me it's important to bring in these new voices, these youthful voices.
I want to jump right into policy on a question here, because that's that's not a policy one. I can't stop from doing it. I'm really committed to a cradle to career education system that fully recognizes childcare and pre-K as part of our universal education system. And one of the short-term steps I see in this is expanding of ECAP and the Working Families Child Care Connections program. How does this, from a state level, obviously there's really just a funding mechanism issue here, but from the county and the implementation side, where are the areas that we can overlap our strengths in terms of not just pushing for funding, but actually expanding that? Fe, give me your perspective on this.
Yeah, so I really look at the childcare need as a health issue, not just about working families, but if you have families that I work with personally, because I work at ECAP, which is Early Childhood Education and Assistance Program. And we work with families of low income and with children with disabilities, and also with risk factors. So, incarcerated parents, all the way to drug use. So our families are definitely in need of this childcare, all the way up to, like you said, school age. And what we see as a health issue is that these parents cannot afford childcare, and the childcare they can afford is dangerous. They are putting their children into situations because it's what's affordable. I had a single mom who put her, walked in on her babysitter sleeping while her 2- and 5-year-old were climbing on furniture that was not secured to the wall. I mean, that's a hazard. And so really working with the county and working with not just looking to possibly fund that as a health concern, but also working with businesses locally to offer this. We used to, back in the 90s and 80s, there used to be daycare provided for employees. So that's another area that we can look at, and having a partnership with these companies and businesses that we can make that happen.
Yeah, and I would also add that at the county itself, we need to be looking at ways for the staff itself to be providing healthcare, to providing childcare and subsidizing it, and also looking at ways that we can make partnerships, like with the hospital or other groups where they can help with, some sort of childcare co-op model to help really give working parents the opportunity, because a lot of working parents, particularly moms, they will need to take time off, and it really messes with their career and their long-term economic viability. That's a big reason why they have lower wages, because they miss out on those years.
Yes.
I think we've got a public-private partnership conversation to be had here in the very near future about childcare and the steps we can take to really implement it as part of a broader conversation of education. But we'll leave it at that. Matt, carry on.
Well, actually, this question comes, Jessica, I'm just going to hand it off to her for this one.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate everyone's perspectives on bringing younger voices, really bringing the concerns of our generation and our kids' generation. Those are really, really good things to touch on, and something that, I know a lot of younger voters are really looking for in candidates. So thank you all for touching on those. Let's talk a little bit more about economic recovery, given our current crisis. I know you share a lot of similar views on this, but do you want to just start, Ivan, by talking about your thoughts on how we get through this crisis stronger as a community?
This is definitely one of those areas that we end up with this very binary choice. We come out of events. It's been 10 years? The last time we had this conversation, we have this binary choice. We have austerity or crisis. That's it. It's a two-way binary choice that doesn't take into consideration any other options. And in 2010-11, we only increased revenue by 7% to account for the budget deficits. 7%. All the rest of the loss after the last term downturn was built on austerity. And when we talk about austerity, of course, what do we cut? We cut non-essential programs. But when government takes on the responsibility of issuing some safety net or some basic line of protection, or the responsibility of education, those are not extracurriculars. This isn't the vacation jar that I can dump out to pay bills. There is not extra money that has been tucked into extra funds. And so I think it's really important on a state level that we acknowledge that we're not going to be able to do this again on the failed practices of austerity. We are going to have to take a look at wealth taxes, capital gains taxes, possibly Senator Wynn's proposal of a CEO excise tax. We have to take a look at progressive taxing as an addition to the binary choice that's just austerity. And then we have to recognize that we are not a business. We talk a lot. As a small business owner, I get a lot. Well, as a small business owner, you'll understand how to balance a budget. Yeah, I know how to balance a business's budget, but a government's budget is totally different. There is a fiduciary responsibility to get it done, to make sure that at the end of the day, we educate our kids, that we take care of our infrastructure, and that we make sure people have a job. We have a fiduciary responsibility to get these things done. And as a result, it isn't as simple as just making sure we're at the black at the end of the year. So I think that the taxing side is a little different for county, but you guys take it from here, Fe. Where do we build off that?
That's actually really hard, and that's why it's a struggle right now with the phases that we're moving into slowly, because most of our taxes is property tax, but then such a small amount. I think, correct me wrong if I'm wrong, Nathan, but 8.9% is our sales tax.
I think our sales tax 8.7.
8.7. So
I don't know
that's
all the facts in the county, but I think it's 8.7.
so not a big amount, and so that's where most of our county revenue comes from. But that's one of the areas where we really push to shop locally, because our county does not have a lot of corporate businesses. We don't have a lot of money coming in from, people shop off island. They go off island to get what they need because we don't have a lot of options or variety here. But just encouraging people to shop locally and, making our place a place that people want to come and visit and spend time at is another, we're pretty much like a vacation spot. People come here definitely during the summer, hit us up, and then go back where they're coming from. But that's one thing that we really have to push for, is even our own residents to shop local. And that even means even expanding out to farms and going to the markets and supporting farms, because they're hurting. And
What do you think in terms of, before I totally just cut off Nathan. He was ready and I just jumped in it. Before we get to Nathan, what do you think? We've talked a lot about the recreation elements of Island County in particular, but does it need to be that way? Does it need to be built solely on recreation? Could we? When we talk about economic recovery, we talk about job recovery, right? Our economy is jobs. That's it. It is workers. That's what our economy, by and large, is. What are the elements that we could do, or the state could do, or the county could do to help make Island County more than just tourism and leisure?
Well, I mean, first off, I want to say that I don't think that Island County is all just tourism and leisure. But to me, what I was wanting to say is one of the big reasons that we are having these conversations, why I'm glad we are having these conversations across the scale of local to state, is because I do think that if we're talking about economic recovery, the best bang for our buck, or the best way we can deal with it, is coming from the state. The state really needs to be providing that support in these emergency times, because they have a lot more tools and a lot more resources that they can tap into than we can tap into locally. But that said, there's lots that we can do locally. But I want to touch also on something that you talked about earlier, Ivan, where about changing kind of the system on how it goes. Because we're still dealing at Island County with issues from the 2008 recession, low wages, insufficient staff, other issues around that. And we need to make sure that when we go into this, when we come out of this situation, that we're coming out stronger than when we went in. And so that, to me, we need to make sure that we set the things in. But I actually think the economy conversation is an interesting one, because right now there are winners and losers, and I hate to put it in those terms. There are people benefiting, people are struggling. There are some of our local businesses, like I know some artist businesses that are thriving right now on the island, and I know some farms that are thriving on the island right now, because people are choosing to stay local. They are saying, I'm not going to go to Seattle to buy my art whatever, or I'm not going to go to Seattle to buy my fancy produce. They're buying it local and they're keeping it local. So in a lot of ways, I actually feel that we are keeping a lot of good local economy strong here. But there is definitely supports. I don't want to overtalk my points.
I want to point out, we just, for everyone watching at home and following along, clearly Nathan has taken to heart our conversations about making sure that all of us communicate with each other on equal footings, and for that we are quite grateful, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan.
Well, I mean, you guys kind of were touching on austerity, and then also it sounded like you kind of brushed up on workers' rights. I mean, I have like austerity personally affected me in 2012. I was a federal employee at the commissary, and I was laid off during the sequestration, just right there and then. Like they just said, your term's up, you're not coming back. Sorry. And that's a real thing. And you guys are talking about workers, you know, the strength that a strong economy provides for workers. Where are you guys on the issue of workers' rights? What do you believe when it comes to striking, or the difference between public sector? I know Nathan, he was the president of Local 1845 before I was, so he has a little bit of experience with that. But Ivan and Fe also, what are your guys' perspectives on that? You guys can pick whoever wants to go first.
I support a worker's right to strike on all levels. Because if you're not feeling that your job is providing you with what you need to be provided with, then you shouldn't have to work for that. I mean, look at the teachers that they went on strike and they got their demands met. And of course it hurt, you know, students being out, but teachers were struggling and they stood up and they said, no more. This is not adequate. This is not allowing us to do our jobs effectively and efficiently. And they demanded it and they got it. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that collective bargaining and working with employees is how we keep from doing that, and we keep it from getting to that point where you feel the need that you have to strike to get your voice heard. Ivan?
I had a fire chief who we had lots and lots of conversations about this because as firefighters, the nature of striking is that it is not that it's not allowed, it's not acceptable, and so I really tried to get to the understanding of but how if you don't have that right, how do you possibly execute the absolute? And he said, well, here's the deal. If you don't have the right to strike, then you have to just always get everything that you ask for. That's it. It's that simple. It's a simple fix. If you don't have the right to strike because striking would cause a risk to the population, then you just get what you need when you ask for it. And I think this leads us to the conversation of and as such, I do very much so believe that all workers have the right to strike, just to be clear. But this leads us to the conversation. We get a lot of questions as candidates about what we believe our role is as managers. If we were managers and our organization was unionizing, what would our role as manager be? And it always is framed in this context of managers being adversaries to unions. And it's complete unnecessary BS. 100%. The role of managers is to say, what can I possibly do to help you have the resources you need to be as strong an organization as possible as workers and workforce? That's the role of managers. There's no need for an adversarial role. There's no statute or law that says that we have to have this manager versus worker relationship. It just isn't necessary. So I say a worker has an unequivocal right to organize. A worker should have unequivocal access to their coworkers at all times, so that they have the ability to communicate and robustly discuss the benefits of organization and unionization throughout their employment, and they should be free from intimidation, coercion, harassment, and abuse. And then we should seriously change the culture of our management world to say managers have a responsibility to act in good faith for everyone, not their perceived fiduciary responsibility to the institution.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, Ivan, about how it doesn't have to be this adversarial thing. There's nothing that says it does. In fact, I went to a training several years ago called LARA, Labor and Employer Relations Association. It's full of a bunch of lawyers, full of a bunch of like state people who know about these labor management union issues. And they were really nailing it into our head about how what a union is it levels the playing field. And so that you've got the employer and you've got the employees, and their level. So when Matt sits down with the employer staff, like the HR staff that is on the county side, he's sitting down as an equal. He's not sitting down as, lower paid Matt Colston working at the county. He's an equal footing. And to me, this is an important thing. And it's an important thing for people to know, not just for those who want to understand how the county government runs, but just in general about unions, that it's about that democracy to make sure that when you sit down and you say, I want to have fair wages, I want to have good, healthy, quality working conditions, I want great benefits, that you are sitting down, or even more so than this, if you're sitting down and they're discussing, disciplinary issues or other issues that come up, issues around budget cuts and things like that, that it's a level playing field, that you are equal. If you don't have a union, it's the big organization, and this is true in the private sector. You fighting against you lowly nobody fighting against a big organization or a big business, and so that's why unions are important. But that is where you have that synergy. That's where you have that ability to not have it be a fight. Let's work together. And I actually think that in the long run, we all want the same thing. The elected officials, the county government, they want to make sure that the county is running efficiently, effectively. And the best way to do that is to ensure you have good staff that are paid well, you don't have a lot of turnover. And so to me, a good relationship between those two ensures that you have a well-functioning organization. Yes.
Those are all three very good answers for that question. I do see, and this is, I know I'm not supposed to, but I do see a little conversation getting brushed on in the chat about police unions and policing. Mm-hmm. So I actually wanted to kind of navigate this conversation towards that topic, because that is, that's a pressing question of the day. It's, police unions often strike or threaten to strike, at least, to withhold protections in cities and things like that when their demands aren't being met. And so what is your guys' stances on, law enforcement? I see that a lot of people have opinions on what we can do to make this situation more equitable, not only just for Black people or just people in general, but in a system that protects, in a way, protects law enforcement after something awful has happened, like we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Anyone?
Now we're all quiet.
Oh, now nobody wants to jump in on the start of that one. I'm going to get right into it. The thing, we have a lot of moving pieces. There's no doubt about this, that there's moving pieces. But there is an institutional element. There is an absolute institutional element, right? We all agree that there is an institutional element. When we get into the unionization side of this, and we talk about the public service, and I again, with a background in firefighting, you bear with me, I tend to lump police and fire in a very similar basket when we talk about unionization, striking, access to public resources, those types of things, because again, it's the experience I had, and I recognize that's not always true. So, but bear with me. So, when we talk about the unionization side of this, it really is a forced arbitration, because there isn't no officer or no firefighter is going to put the risk of their coworkers' lives at risk over labor disputes. There's a fundamental need for them to have strong arbitration resources available to them, and so we catch that. We'll set that piece aside. If you're going to have forced arbitration because there's lives at stake, that forced arbitration needs to work in the favor of the labor. Period. So I want to touch on that element, regardless of whether or not this is firefighters, police, or what have you. With that being said, in terms of kind of what we find ourselves in right now, Black Lives Matter, and we have failed to address this. We have failed to use an institutional privilege at protecting our citizenry. We have failed to as white citizens within a society, we have failed to put ourselves between that abuse and that risk of life and the lives that are being threatened. We have failed to accomplish the task of protecting our neighbors. And we now have a responsibility to address the fact that there is a complete cultural failure, a complete and absolute tolerance for hatred, bigotry, and abuse within our institutions. And we have a responsibility to, one, address that and eradicate it where possible. But in the meantime, to put ourselves between that abuse and those who are being abused. And that's, it's not my voice that matters. I cannot speak for communities that are being marginalized and worse, murdered. I can't. What I can do is I can put myself in between it. And I think that's the first step of this for us.
Yeah, I agree. Training. Definitely our system compared to other countries is a lack of training, and not just training as in how to de-escalate situations, but also training as in racial equity training, and also training with racial systemic racism. That's something that I feel that even at a county level, that employees need to have this training, because it's, I was raised in the Deep South, and it was what I grew up with, and it was normal. It was absolutely normal the way that what we see today. So having that training and going through classes and learning, my whole view has changed and it's grown. And I think a lot of that needs to happen, and it needs to happen in sectors where people are leaders and are seen in the community as authoritarians. But I love what San Francisco did. They are funding and better educating for social services, because our police force they don't have a social service background. That is not what they're supposed to be there to protect and serve, not to be the judge, not to pass down on who should and should not live, and to have situations where it's a domestic issue. It should not be a police officer to handle a person with a disability. That should not be a police officer. These are social service areas where someone needs to be brought in that knows how to calmly and effectively de-escalate a situation and handle it. And so I'll pass it over to Nathan if he wants to have input on this.
Yeah, so I want to specifically talk to what Marianne's question was in the chat about police unions, abuse, and the this idea of police unions do often, so they make the cycle of bad cops keep getting rehired, and my feeling is a union, and I've said this many times, a union is like a democracy. I mean, that's really what it is. But there are good democracies and there are bad democracies. And like with a lot of the institutions that we have in our society, we've kind of let things stagnate, and we haven't really worked vigilantly to make them better or to ensure that they're better. So to me, we need to step back. I'm not proposing that we get rid of police unions or the idea of unionizing. I think unions are essential in all employment sectors. But I do think that, especially with law enforcement, we need to have better oversight over some of those behaviors. Like civilian oversight would be key to that. And we do at the county, for the sheriff's department, the commissioners do appoint the 3 civil service commissioners that they are technically in charge of making rules around hiring, firing, discipline for the sheriff deputies. And that's where a big area that we can fix it. But in a lot of ways, we just need to rethink the approach on how we deal with law enforcement, change our system from being such a enforcement or all about, the big weapons, the big machinery. I mean, I was in the military, and a lot of police forces do have military style weapons, military style equipment, and move away from that type of enforcement to more of a community support model. And there's all sorts of ways to get there, and it depends on how we want to get there. But to me, we need to be at least looking towards that. And so I don't want to get rid of police unions, but that doesn't mean that we can't have better civilian oversight and other things.
Great, thanks everyone for those perspectives. Let's move on to having a bit more of a conversation about one of the other big talking points that's come up in the last few months, especially, is healthcare. I'd love to explore that with all of you. Let's start with Fe this time. What are your views on that?
Universal. Healthcare is a right, and you should not die just because you're poor. Just because you don't have financial stability does not mean that you should not get adequate quality healthcare. And as for, I'm on the Community Health Advisory Board, and we've seen the hospital, we've seen the struggle that it's had over the years, and with us being in a rural community, it's so important for us to have a hospital here. And so during the pandemic, we saw how close it was to closing, and how scary that was. And I'm part of Indivisible Would Be, and we started a petition. We reached out to the state, and we got funding for it. But there are still people that unless they're on Medicare or have insurance, or even those that do have insurance, don't have insurance that will cover cost of what they're needing to get done. And so they just don't go to the doctor at all, or they go into debt. I mean, with this pandemic, people are getting hit with astronomical amounts of bills, and they shouldn't be. I mean, it's definitely a business, and it's money making, and that's not the way it should be.
Absolutely. How about you, Ivan?
I was waiting to see whether or not I was next. So this is one of those cornerstone conversations. The thing that healthcare, it's amazing how many pieces healthcare touch. Healthcare touches reproductive justice. Healthcare touches child protections. Healthcare touches touches our elderly and access to seniors. Healthcare is such a fundamental building block of so many of the social programs that we rely on, and it is absolutely imperative that healthcare be a human right, and it is absolutely imperative that we have access to that right through a universal system. And I favor personally, and obviously, this is from a state level side, the Washington Health Security Trust proposal, as well as the whole Washington proposal, both get us to a Washington single payer that shifts the process of deciding care from insurance companies and corporations to individuals, their doctors, and the medical community. It is where this relies. And one of the things we talk about for a long time, we've been having the conversation when we talk about reproductive justice, we talk about the fact that the right to reproductive resources, the right to an abortion, is only as good as the access and affordability. The right is only a right if it is accessible and affordable. And when it comes to healthcare, a lot of people talk about being progressive, and a lot of people throw around access to affordable access to healthcare. But healthcare cannot be a right, a true right, until we have universal access to it as a resource and the affordability. And the best way I see to do that is through a single payer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm flying at the cat.
I know, I'm sorry. She's gonna put in her views on universal health care as well.
Okay.
But I know I appreciate both of your feedback so far. I know healthcare has been a deciding factor in what jobs I take, and and that is I've been fortunate enough to have employer healthcare, and that's just not the case for so many people, and we're really seeing the impact of that now. And Nathan, it is now your turn to speak on this topic. We don't want to leave you out.
Oh, that's fine. It's interesting you brought up, this isn't what I was going to say, but it's interesting you brought up the idea of employer health care. And for those that know the history of our healthcare system, it really did start out with that kind of like, we couldn't offer new wages, so what can we offer? We'll pay for your doctor visits, things like that. And so we think of that as just an inherent in the system is you should get your health care through your employer. But I actually find, as someone that's negotiated over healthcare, it puts a lot of power over what should be a very private, personal thing in your employer's hands, which is just kind of an awkward thing. So that's just a side note. I, of course, 100% supportive of universal healthcare, human right. As a veteran, I had universal healthcare when I was in the military, and it was amazing. When I had a young kid, my oldest, when he was, when he was sick in the middle of the night, I didn't worry about, can I afford to go? I just went to whatever hospital. It didn't matter what hospital, whatever's closest. If I was visiting family, I would just go to that hospital. But there have been times where we've been like, well, let's wait and see how bad it gets. See if it's a real something that we need to do. So of course, I'm supportive of that. But going to Fee's point, I do think locally, we needed to be doing a lot better support for our local institutions like our hospital, because even though, no offense, the hospital has had some bad reputations in the past, it is an asset to this community, and it will be a major loss if we lose it. I have heard that a lot has improved with the hospital and new management. So I would want to, and both Fee and I would end up being on the board of health. We would have a say over at least trying to help promote it and get it working better. But I'd also like to look at some other interesting ways. We're living in a time where everything's virtual, and why aren't we looking at, new ways of doing some of the things we're doing, like telemedicine, and, not for everything, but, you can do it. I know Erin, my wife, has done, we often will call the nurse hotline, and that's a great service rather than going in for something that is going to end up costing us a ton of money, and it takes an appointment away from somebody else that needs it. So there are things that we can do locally that we should be looking into in terms of this.
Yeah, Jessica, just another thing on that, what Nathan was talking about jobs and the security of healthcare, it also comes back to possible domestic violence and people not being able to leave a toxic job or relationship because then they would lose the healthcare that they so desperately need. So it's not just bargaining, or it's also can be something that someone is held in a relationship or a job that is toxic, yet they cannot leave because that is held over their head.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very important point.
I would love to shift to talk more about climate change over the environment. I feel like that's something we've talked a lot about: jobs, healthcare, other important things, but I feel like that's a big gap that we're
actually, that was before we headed into Q&A. I actually wanted to bring that up before we went in. So just go on and
go on, Nathan.
we're talking to that. Yeah, you wanted to bring it up. You go ahead and get the subject started.
Sorry, was I muted there? Okay. I often mute. I do so many telemeetings now. It's just a habit to mute my microphone. I have a button to mute. Sorry. So with climate change, there's all sorts of things to talk about, but to me, the big thing, at least the big step that I would like to do when I first elected, is really making a climate action task force, maybe even a civilian component to that, where we really work hard at coming up with meaningful steps to combat climate change. And the very first step that we need to do is make sure that we do a county-wide greenhouse gas emission inventory, and then we set aggressive targets that we need to reduce those by. The state has a required targets that they're supposed to meet by, but there's no such requirement for a local and city and town. So we need to set those targets, and then with that task force, we need to come up with meaningful ways to tackle it. There are a lot of low-hanging fruits. I know we've talked about this several times, about things like We can adjust the code to do things like require people, new buildings to have stub outs for electric vehicles. I mean, these are little things that can be done that changes kind of how we do things. The county fleet and the county buildings are all energy guzzling things. But bigger than that, I would love to work on building more like community solar farms like you see at Green Bank Farm, or alternatives to that. And there's a whole bunch of things that we can do, but to me, the best way that we can do this is if we build this task force that we say this is a serious thing. Because when I was working at the county, we were not allowed to talk about climate change. We weren't allowed to say the word climate change. We convinced people to say we could talk about sea level rise, but we couldn't say what's causing the sea levels to rise. So, I mean, we have a lot of area to grow on this.
Yeah, and the county has an Island County climate action plan. It's there, but it hasn't gone anywhere. So they do have the subcommittee, but nothing's happened with it. They have the name. So I am also agreeing that I would really like to jump in there and get started on that, because without, a healthy climate, we're not going to have anything else here. And so talking on Nathan's point, I love the idea of taking a lot of the county vehicles are big and they are gas guzzlers, and one of the small thing that we can do that would save with insurance costs and emissions and fuel costs is taking the county vehicles to hybrid or to electric. And then that will also putting in more electric chargers along the island, because we only have south end and north end. So that would also be something that we can look into that would be effective on a short-term measure, but also utilizing and expanding our sources of renewable energy. We have a lot of open space. So you talking about solar farms or wind farms, I mean, we have the opportunity here. We have plenty of wind. We know it's windy, would-be. So we have that option available, and that would also create jobs, and that would bring in jobs, and that would also keep people here and hopefully pay them well enough so that they can live where they work. So we also have to make sure that that's available to them. Hey, Ivan.
The state level, there are so many moving pieces to this that I'll tackle a couple of big ones. One of which is we have to recognize that, again, the economy is made of workers, and the economy is what generates carbon, and we have to figure out how to create a just transition that magnifies the green work and the carbon neutral work that allows us to use a Green New Deal or a New Deal approach to putting people to work that absolutely magnifies the effectiveness of the workforce on reducing a carbon heavy industry. The additional pieces of this are that we have an absolute responsibility to right now fix the culvert crisis. Right this minute, we need to get this work done. It is an absolute. We need to address the water runoff into the pollution runoff into the Salish Sea, and we need to address a widespread plot development plan that is not just built on development and growth, but is built on the fact that we need an appropriate ecosystem to help manage that water runoff in an effective way. And currently, we're just not addressing that. And then we need to address the fact that we will never convince people to make the hard decisions without utilizing the tool that we have at our disposal, and that is capitalism. So long as it is cheaper to pollute than it is to make the right decisions, people will pollute. The only way we get industry to truly take the responsibility is to make it cost effective for them to utilize the resources that are carbon neutral and carbon restorative, not not to take the easy way out of carbon heavy industry. So we can do that with two resources. We can make it less expensive and easier to gain access to green energy sources, and we can make it more expensive to pollute. And those are the steps I think we should be taking right now to really tackle more than just a target and a goal, but real, right now, real world directional change.
Can I follow up to that?
You started. Why not?
Sure.
Bring us home.
Well, I like a lot what you were saying there, Ivan. But yeah, there is a lot that we can do locally. There's a lot that we can do with the county. There is a lot of great things. Not to. Greg has made a good comment about incentivizing retention of forest lands and trees for carbon sequestration. Lots of great ideas that we can do locally, and we should be doing locally. And there are a lot of good ideas for that, for people to be in their own lives changing the habits of things. But Ivan, you were sort of touching on this idea that those are only a small piece of really what's going to change this issue, what's really going to tackle this issue. And that's where we really need to come together as a society and say, this is a big issue. We need to get our states, we need to get our big businesses, we need to get them all on the same page, because what we do here on Whidbey, great. It'll be great if we get electric vehicles, it'll reduce our carbon footprint. It'll be great if we save the trees here on Whidbey and Camino Islands. It's great. That will help those things, but it is such a small piece to that. And we will never be able to tackle climate change without getting the whole big picture.
Again, I think we shouldn't forget that taking the low-hanging fruit we shouldn't dismiss the taking of low-hanging fruit, though.
Oh no, I'm not trying to.
Let's take the low-hanging fruit while we tackle the big issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We often, when we're talking about, especially people who dismiss climate change, I feel like there's this idea of, well, it's a personal responsibility thing. You need to be, eating less meat. You need to be doing this, that. It's about you. You're the cause of climate change. But it's really we as a society are the cause of climate change. And so we as a society need to fix it and change how we do things.
Yeah, but we're small enough to do it locally, as in, cut down on your plastic use, buy locally, and, not pre-packaged. So even though it's not huge and it's not going to change everything, it's passing on those mindsets to generations that come, to my own children, passing on those mindsets and getting enough people involved and to pass on that mindset is how we grow and change as a society.
Acknowledging that it's not just an existential threat, but a moral threat as well.
Yeah,
yes.
100%.
That's a really good place to stop right here and go into our Q&A section.
Okay.
We have some questions from our guests before they enrolled. They threw us some questions, so you guys just answer them as we go through them. I got it open here. So I'm gonna start since Nathan started in the last one. I'm gonna go with Fe on the first one, and
Okay.
ask.
Just to clarify, these were questions that were people when they registered asked. So these are
yes. These were sent in as the people registered. So for Fe, and then Ivan, and then Nathan, since you answered first, you answer last on this one. Whidbey Island has a lot of family-owned farms, but we're losing them at a record pace. How will you keep our farms local, or local farms? Sorry, misread that.
I'm going to give some credit to your sister because she actually brought this up, talking with Ivan. Co-op. That is one of the greatest things that we can do is have a co-op. I mean, that's just not, fruits and vegetables throughout the year, but it's also wares. It's also candles and clothing and buying more locally. I really believe working and partnering with local farms to start a co-op would be one of the greatest things that we can do in our county, or at least for Island County here. Because, I mean, who doesn't love going to Mount Vernon and other counties and they have co-ops? And this way I think it'd be really great because our farmers markets, they're dwindling and they're also such a short time span. So if we expand that and have that as a store as year long, I think we could really bring in not just local buying, but also people that come over and visit would also use and take advantage of that co-op.
Okay. How about you, Ivan?
I think one of the things there's obviously the sustainability grants and programs that really need to be maximized. We've started some of this specifically in the Skagit Valley. We really need we really need to roll out a statewide small ag infrastructure. Right now, it's very piecemeal. There's a little of this here, there's a little of that there, and as someone who has done both hobby farming and a little bit of commercial work, it's impossible to navigate the resources that are available, and we need a better infrastructure for this. The other side is really recognizing the resource. Right now we have a state code that is so ready to a tax code that is so ready to provide financial assistance to businesses who bring jobs. You're gonna bring us a job to Washington? Great, come on. Let's throw you a bone. Let's figure out where we can meet on tax advantage or infrastructure or what have you. And then we have agriculture, the production of a product necessary for the survival of human existence, and we seem to lack that same passion for making a deal. And I think that there's a huge missed opportunity for us in the state to recognize the advantage of even just a couple of dollars when it comes to taxation in supporting ag and supporting small farmers as the resource they really are, which is a life-sustaining opportunity for us within the community.
Okay, that's a good one. How about you, Nathan?
How about me? So this question I think is an interesting one because I don't, not to disparage whoever asked the question, I don't necessarily 100% agree with the question, because I actually think that many of our family-owned farms, our local farms, are doing quite well. Yes, there are several that are struggling, and I don't mean to disparage the ones that are struggling, but I don't see evidence of us losing, like those farmers just up and leaving as much. The reason I bring this all up is I actually think I'm pretty hopeful about our local agriculture. I see a lot of people who are really interested in starting new farms, starting hobby farms, starting local farms. I know a lot of farmers, especially on the south end, who are really into sustainable agriculture and really rethinking how we do things. So I often am doom and gloom about things, but this is one of those areas where actually I'm pretty hopeful. You see the Whidbey Island grown cooperative that's happening right now, where people can order food from the locals. There's great community supported agricultural programs that a lot of the CSAs, that a lot of the farms have. And I was actually talking to some farmer friends that I have, and they were saying, the best way that you can support our farms is just buy food from our farms. And so, just getting people out there. But I also want to talk about that we really need to rethink that how we do our food distribution in general. And that's a whole national thing. But even locally, we want to make sure that this food stays locally and not gets shipped off island unless it's surplus. But from my personal experience, I also want to mention that it's important from another angle to look at our land use regulations and make sure that we aren't, there isn't encroachment on farmland, that there isn't pressures for farmland to develop into lots of housing, or incentives for them to keep farming. A lot of farmers, when they retire, they want to sell, traditionally they've wanted to sell off parcels so that they can retire off of that money. And so we need to provide incentives to make sure that they keep that farm alive, because once you put a house on a farm, once you pave over a farm, you're not getting it back.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, and I am glad that someone asked this question, because it is something that I live in Central Whidbey. I live on the Eves Reserve, and the keeping our rural character is really important to me, and I think it's one of the things that makes Whidbey so special. And so being able to balance our need for more housing, for affordable housing, with keeping that rural character, being able to balance those two needs is really important going forward. And it ties into our environmental issues that we're facing, being able to really build out our platforms on all of these things to connect to one another is, I think, where it's at going forward. Let's see here. For our next question, we know teamwork makes the dream work. So how do each of you envision working with the other county commissioners if you were to be elected? And let's see here. We started with Ivan last time, so let's start with you again, with you, Fe.
Yeah, having that open conversation and welcoming that conversation with each other. And I definitely believe in respect and just being open-minded and welcoming those ideas to come and being able to work and collaborate and find solutions. I think that is what really makes the job fun, is that there are different ideas and seeing which ideas are going to work and being able to have that teamwork and that communication. I think that is so important, especially with commissioners, because we only have a few times that we can actually have meetings and talk and discuss. And in those times, I mean, we need to get to business, and there's no time to fight and argue and bicker. It's a time where we have to serve the public, and to do so, we have to be respectful of each other's time and focus on getting what needs to get done.
Absolutely. Yeah. How about you, Nathan?
Yeah, and I'm hoping Ivan will expand this to be not just how the commissioners, but how elected officials can work together. And I actually personally will expand it to be more around how elected officials, as I was mentioning earlier, I've had conversations. I know I've worked with a lot of the elected officials. I've worked with all the commissioners except for Janet St. Clair. I didn't actually work with because I moved on, although I have, worked with her. Not when I was working there, but to me, it's all about building those respects and that understanding. And I actually think that's something that I really bring to the table, that I don't, for anyone that knows me, they know that I'm someone that can collaborate and I can reach to people all sorts of the areas. I'm not going to name names. There's an elected official, Republican at the county who, I worked well with, and in fact, that they put me in for Employee of the Month, which I got. Not to like toot my own horn or anything, but I find that we just need to approach things with respect. Remember that we are just people, and especially at the local level, it's really just about dealing with the issues that are at hand, not like posturing. And I do think that a lot of the commissioners. A lot of the time during the commissioners' meetings, there is a lot of posturing over issues, and that's just not something that's productive, and it's not something that's necessary. Let's work to collaborate to find solutions. Let's not sit here and try to fight for a compromise. Let's collaborate together, because we're all in this together. I think everyone that is on the commission wants the best for Island County. We don't have to fight about it.
I think I'm assuming that you're done talking. I'm going to go for it here. I'm going to take my opportunity to jump in the void space. I think that one of the things. So first off, the from my position, my biggest collaboration would occur with my seatmate Dave Paul, and I think that we share a lot of values, and I think he's just a genuinely wonderful human being, and I think it would be a privilege to have the opportunity to work with him in that way, and in terms of collaboration on a broader spectrum, I think one of the things that is really important to me is that I almost hate the idea of compromise as much as I hate the idea that we run government like business. Compromise is that everybody loses something they wanted. And it's crap. It's absolute crap. We fight these games where everybody turns in a little bit of their value in exchange for some sort of end product. And it doesn't need to be that way. There are a lot of win-win solutions that do not require that we give up. And on the flip side of that, there are a lot of times that we should not give an inch, that we should not for a second give up the values that are most important to us and our constituents. And so I think it's really important from my philosophy, my perspective in terms of working with colleagues is that, one, let's look for a win-win solution, what we can do with this. And I think that there are a lot of people who are looking for win-wins on every side of every issue. And two, let's know the things that are absolutely unequivocally not going to be a compromise. I will never compromise on a woman's right to choose. It's never going to happen. It will never be a compromise. You'll never find an area where we will find a middle ground on something other than a woman's right to choose. It ain't going to happen. So let's not have a conversation about it. I'm not going to move. Those issues have to just be clearly defined in a way that when we work with our colleagues, and I think that that's what gives us the best space to look for those win-wins.
I want to add to that. I'm really glad, Ivan, that you brought up that compromise is such a dangerous place. And I know that a lot of people are like, oh, the compromise is how you get things done. And to some extent, I can see where people feel that way. But to me, it sets up this adversarial thing. If one side is sitting down to compromise with another, it's an us versus them. And so the point is, who's going to fight the hardest for their side? And we see that with like the national politics is that issue. But the reality is, on the local level, let's talk about environmental things. If I'm going to sit down, I've got an environmental group over here, and I've got a development group over here, and they're arguing about it. And you say, I'm going to find a compromise, but the compromise might both hurt the development and hurt the environment. And is that really a good thing? No, we should be finding a collaborative solution, saying, hey, we want to make sure that this project is successful, but we want to make sure that it's successful in a way that helps the environment, or at least limits the hurt that it has on the environment. And when you have that approach, like we're working on this together, it changes the conversation.
Right on.
I want to poke some good fun at Nathan really fast here before we move on. Nathan has a wonderful ability to continue his thought process while others are talking, and you can just see it building and building and building until he's ready to just burst with excitement. I think it's quite endearing, but I just want to point out that it is also terribly amusing because you can just tell he's ready to just make it happen.
The wheels are always turning.
He's just cranking over the question.
Well, we have about 15 minutes left, so we probably have time for two deeper questions. So I'm going to ask, what actions do you plan to take to intentionally meet the unmet needs of people with disabilities in our community? And I want to start with Fe.
So, ADA accessibility needs to be the standard. It already where we need to have, if there's stairs, we need ramps. If there's more than 2 floors, we need elevators. This is to where any old new development needs to already have the accessibility for that. And then with that, I mean, we have department at the county that works with disability on a whole, and so I'm looking to work with them and see what else we need to touch on. But just from this point is definitely the accessibility for people to be able to be more mobile. And one of the areas that we absolutely need to make sure that we keep clear is transit, because I mean, free transit, that is one of the biggest ways that people with disabilities are able to get to and from, and we have to keep transit free.
Yeah. Nathan.
Yeah, so to me, this is all just about priorities. We have regulations on the book already, albeit we can make the regulations better, no doubt. But I'm saying, the Americans with Disability Act of 1996, we're still not enforcing what we have. And it's all about that priority. Actually, I'm working with someone in Snohomish County, and I applaud Snohomish County. I actually applaud this particular person because they were told to, update the ADA around sidewalks, but they didn't just say, okay, we're going to update some sidewalk stuff. They said, we're going to make a plan and a prioritization so that we are going to get every sidewalk ADA compliant. And it is an aggressive target that they're meeting those needs. And they're finding all the steps along the way that they need to do it. And they're making a plan and how are we going to get the grant funding for that, and being proactive about that. So I say all this because to me, it's all about priorities. And I know I'm just talking about infrastructure in this sense, but it's all about setting those priorities. We know how to make things accessible, at least in terms of for a lot of the issues that we're talking about. We just need to actually make it a priority and do these things. I'll leave it there.
Alrighty. But yeah, of course. All right. How about you, Ivan?
There are the huge pentacle issues: housing, healthcare, jobs access. They are absolute issues that need to be addressed for ensuring that everyone in our community has an equitable access to resources. It's housing, it's jobs, it's healthcare. One of the things that concerns me tremendously about the way that we view access to resources and the way we view accessibility in general is that we still view this in the, well, how many does it affect? How many people? It doesn't matter how many. If it affects one person and prevents them from having an equal access, we've failed to achieve our fundamental responsibility. And I think that's the starting place that we have to have this is really addressing the fact that we still have an institutional vision of accessibility as being a burden, not being an opportunity for us to play a part in ensuring a baseline of human existence, and I think we can do better in those regards. And to be specific, I think it is enforcement of code regulations. It is ensuring safe and accessible sidewalks that Island County in particular needs a little improvement on, particularly when we talk about the access from transit from point A to point B. We have a transit system that is reasonably robust, but the access points from to need to be something that we really take into consideration.
Before we go into the last question, Jessica and Matt, do you mind if I say something that I feel like we didn't really touch on as well before, that I feel like we should touch on?
What is it, Nathan?
All right. So we were talking about why we are working together, but I feel like we didn't touch on a big part of that, which is I have some areas that I feel strong and comfortable in what I am working on. I'm strong. Not to toot my own horn, I'm strong in land use and policy. And around sort of more of the built environment. I would say I'm pretty strong with the environmental side of the house, but I'm not as strong on some of the areas like social services, healthcare, mental health issues, just because that's just not been my experience. And this is one of the areas where like Fe has a real strong suit in. And to me, that's the whole point on having these collaboratives, having these dialogues, is making sure that we have, our strengths and weaknesses supported. And for Ivan, to me, it will be essential. If there's so much that we can't do locally or that we can do better if we have the state support. And Ivan knows how to. He's got the mentality and the know-how to pass laws. I know that he knows how the system works, and he has the charisma and the strength to get out there and make sure that even though he's going to be the junior person, he'll be able to work with Dave Paul. He'll be able to work with our other representatives and make sure that we get good things, so that Fe and I can sit there and say, we would need something changed, or some grant, or something that supports Island County. We can call up Dave Paul, we can call up Ivan Lewis, and they will help get this done for us. And to me, that's the importance of it, is they have strengths, I have strengths, and together we're stronger. Now let's all
Well,
hug.
you kind of stole the thunder for the last question, I guess. But we, Jessica, you go ahead and lead off with the last question.
Yeah, so I do want to touch on this before we go. It deserves some time from each of you, and that is, you know, we have seen a global movement in the past month on social justice and Black Lives Matter. We know that change starts in our communities, in our local governments. And, you know, so one of the questions that we got from the audience was, you know, what will you do as county commissioner? But again, let's go to elected official to help advance the movement against racism in Island County and at the state level. So let's start with you, Ivan.
As I touched on earlier, this is obviously something fresh on the mind. We have an absolute responsibility to right this minute acknowledge the fact that we created a disease. We created a pandemic that we have been suffering, and that members of our community have been suffering in horrifically disproportionate amounts. We have a pandemic that is plagued trans women of color that has put their lives at risk to a life expectancy that is only a couple of years greater than I am right now. That is a horrific shortcoming that we have not just allowed to happen, but have been responsible for creating. And at every level of government, from our dog catchers and school board members to our courts and our presidencies and our legislators, it is imperative that we recognize that we did this and that we can do something about it by starting with the institutional elements that are just being allowed to chug along. And in the meantime, we can put ourselves, our individual bodies and our positions and our privilege in between the actions of hate and bigotry and disease and the individuals so incredibly at risk. And so that's to me, that's what I as a human being and hopefully as an elected official, that is the absolute for me. In the short term, we step in between. We don't take the voice. We don't speak for. We stand in between. We use the privilege to stand as a guard, stand in as a barrier. And in the long term, we tear it down. We tear down generations and generations of institutional and organizational hatred that they just have to be dismantled one piece at a time.
Wanna go ahead, Fee?
Yes to all of that. And also it's also starting with our youth. But what to bring more to the county is, like I said in the beginning, to bring it back to training and education. And actually everyone at the county, employees need to have training in racial equity and systemic racism, because it's something that does have to be unlearned. Generations have grown up with this. I was raised with Confederate flags in my home, and with that mentality that you're white, so you're better educated, or the black on black crime. It's just so fluent in the way I was raised, and being able to move out of that, and also being open and acknowledging my privilege and acknowledging my racist biases. It's that acknowledgement. And it is going to take hard work, because it is hard to recognize. It's hard to open up. It's hard to say, oh, I was just racist there, even though you never meant to be. It still is something that is so deeply rooted into us. As a mother, I think about my children, and my son walks out wearing a hoodie, and I worry. Of course I worry. I'm a mother, but I do not have that extra level of fear and just horrific feeling that my child is not going to come home only because of the color of their skin. So to really grasp that and to help others see that, and part of my platform is compassion, and to have compassion for others, and even compassion for those who don't see their own racial tendencies, their racist, not racial, their own racist tendencies, is to say, okay, I get that, I was once there, but there is an option and an opportunity to learn. And I think we can bring that to the county. We can bring that into the police force. We can bring that into our schools and start teaching a whole new history. Instead of Christopher Columbus, let's start about, the natives, that the land, and acknowledging the land that we're on and who it belongs to. Is just, like Ivan said, tearing that down and rebuilding on such a better way, that America is a melting pot of so many ideas. And I mean, the food, we have great food in this country, and we wouldn't have such great food and if we did not have all these cultures in one place.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, Nathan?
I know we are
Go
short on
ahead,
time, and I have
We
a lot.
are.
I have a lot to say on this, and there was a lot we can do to address these. But since we are short on time, I just want to say, to me, one of the most important things is we can't stop having this conversation. We get so easily as a society distracted by the next big thing or the next issue that's facing us. But these issues in particular, human rights issues, are something that have to always be at the forefront. And we always have to be having this conversation and saying, how can we do it better? We can't get distracted by the other things that are facing us. Otherwise, we will let atrocities continue to happen. So all I'm going to say is, let's not forget human rights forefront.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate all of your perspectives on this. I know personally as an elected official, and I would hope, everyone else, if you do end up being an elected official, there is that inherent privilege that comes with this position, and you do have the power to work on your institutions and your organizations and combat those systemic pieces that haven't been looked at since the beginning of their creation. And I think that's the hard work. It's a hard work that we all face, but I am excited. I will agree with some of the comments that this is a wonderful, exciting time, and I'm hopeful that we can really enact some big change in Island County. I'm so happy to see, young faces running for office. I felt very alone when I ran last year, and I'm really happy to see this and happy to be a part of this group, and excited for the future.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, I'm gonna say, just from speaking with all three of these candidates, and you too, Jessica, as well, when you were running for school board,
And Joseph,
I'm
when he
very
ran for
and Joseph, yeah,
Absolutely,
I'm
yeah.
the only one here who hasn't run for any public office.
Yes.
This is an exclusive club, but to that point, like, I'm very optimistic because of the fact that you guys understand that and you're taking that on every day. You don't shy away from it, and that's something that's important. I want to, just before we head off, just do some housekeeping. I sent in the chat everyone, there's a links to everyone's webpage. There's a link to everyone's donation page here, and then there's also my email address. You can send me any of the questions that didn't get answered preliminarily. We will send to each candidate, or if that was specific, or if it's a group email or group subject, we'll send it to them in an email, and they'll try to answer back if from the email addresses that were submitted. we really want to thank you all for taking some time in your afternoon. You know, this is an exciting time. We have 3 candidates who have, you know, who have kids, who have a stake in the future here at Island County, and that's super important. They want to see this place be somewhere where their kids can grow up, and that's important. I'm really optimistic, and I'm glad to have met these individuals, of course, but I'm also glad to call some of them my personal friends. So thank you all for coming tonight, and I hope to get any emails, extra emails if you have any, and just look at the resources that we have put together for you all in the chat. So
I want to address the elephant left in that room. Some of us, your close friends. Is this like a 2 out of 3 thing, Matt?
no.
Thank you, Matt, Joseph, Jessica. Thank you very, very, very much for your support tonight and your help making this happen for us. We really, truly, truly appreciate it. Speaking for all of us, I'm sure. Thank you very, very much. And for everyone who's listening at home, thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to hear us ramble.
Yep.
Yeah, very much.
I
Hope to hear from you all soon.
I had fun.
You love this kind of stuff though, Nathan, so that makes sense.
Thought we were just getting started.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great night.
Okay. Good night, all.
Everybody.
Take care.
Night.